Bob Gibson here. Many people think negotiations are about tactics and strategies. They are, but only on the surface. The truth is there's always two negotiations taking place simultaneously. You've got the obvious conventional one on top of the table, and it concerns issues, things like money, deadlines, timelines, specs. But I'm suggesting to you today that there's another negotiation. It's a subtle, complex negotiation, and it goes on under the surface. It's not about issues at all. It's about who you are and who they are. It's what's under the surface that determines whether negotiations work. It's the other party's emotions and values that determine which tactics work and which don't, when to select certain tactics and which style to adopt and which to avoid. You know, a good metaphor for a negotiator is a doctor, a physician. As a negotiator, you've got many tools at your disposal, just like a physician has many possible solutions for treating a health problem. They've got pills, thousands of different pills. They've got potions, they've got ointments, shots, physical therapy, surgery, lifestyle. There's many options. The more a doctor knows about you, how you react and respond to different treatments, the better job they can do to heal you. And you as a negotiator are no different. You have access to different styles, different techniques, tactics, strategies, and options in a negotiation. Knowing which of these to use depends on your knowledge of the other person and their situation. So let's take a look at what drives them under the surface. What are their values? Do they have hot buttons and other things that they're allergic to? Now, don't make the mistake of thinking that someone doesn't have values or that you can't figure out what they are. Everyone has values, and you can detect them because everyone has behaviors. Observe their behaviors and you'll have a pretty good idea of what's under the table with most people. Andrew Carnegie said this well. He said, "As I grow older, I pay less attention to what men say. I just watch what they do." He was pretty smart. So here we go. This is a list of drivers. Not all, but certainly enough to get the ball rolling. Being right. There's no mystery here. Many people simply can't admit that they're capable of making a mistake, or ever would. Being important. Now you can observe this from a grade school principal to the head of a department to the executives in your company. Many people get their strokes from being important. If they get that from a business situation, the deal has a good chance of going well. If they don't, they'll find a way to mess up the deal. Looking good. Everyone wants to look good to someone. Some people want to look good to their manager, maybe some to coworkers, some to customers, some to a board or shareholders. When I'm consulting, I'm preparing for a negotiation with a client, and we're doing our homework on the individuals on the other side, a question I always ask is, who is this person most anxious to impress? The answer tells you a lot. Fairness. We live in a cynical world, but I find many people still hold fairness as a worthwhile value. My experience is that this is not as uncommon as many people might think. Power, control. The link between negotiation and power, it's been chronicled since early times, and it probably doesn't need to be explored again here, except to say that many people are driven by having things their own way, whether it's a number on a contract or where a desk sits in an office. This has not much to do with the money or the placement of the desk. It has to do with power, with control, and with who calls the shots. Being appreciated, being valued is of enormous importance to many people in business. You've probably heard about this. There was a study several years ago delving into factors resulting in job satisfaction. What makes people enjoy where they work? Well, I'm a business guy, right? And I thought money. Money came out 7th, while being appreciated, being valued, and working with people you like was at the top of the list. Fame. You know, this is easily observed in the celebrity field. Top business people, they're no less susceptible to fame than anyone else, especially at these top levels. Look at people like Richard Branson, Oprah Winfrey, Donald Trump. Business people are celebrities now. Impatience. A common and often effective negotiation technique is simply to drag your feet and eventually wear the other person down. My lawyer in Atlanta knows that there are people that if you drag things out and drag things out, at some point they'll say, oh, for God's sakes, let's just be done with it. Let's just make it go away. Being liked. Everyone wants to be liked, but some people carry it to an extreme. We even have entire professions now that have an inordinate need to be liked. And in business, it's salespeople. I was working with a sales team not long ago, and a sales manager told me, he said, Bob, I have to tell you, he said, my sales team, their greatest strength is that they are people. He thought a minute and he said, their greatest weakness is that they're people. And he was right on both counts. Being safe. I told you we'd cover two universal drivers. Here's the second. Being safe, not making a mistake. These are individuals who have a fear of getting taken. Now, security is important, and for a good reason. Let's be honest. In many companies today, getting ahead is not achieved by head-turning accomplishment. It's achieved by simply staying out of trouble. And in such an environment, being safe becomes part of the culture. Excellence. Many people are driven by excellence, simply by doing what they do well. Competition. Competition is rampant at the top levels of business, sports, almost every endeavor. Now often, when you're head-to-head over money, it's not about the money. It's about competition. To round out this rogues gallery, if we're going to be honest, we have to include avoiding work, avoiding effort, avoiding responsibility. Many people are simply lazy. That's not all the drivers, but it's enough to get the idea. And here's what you can take to the bank. Drivers dictate strategy. If you're negotiating with someone driven by power, for example, you're going to negotiate very differently than if you're negotiating with someone driven by fairness. If you're negotiating with someone driven by impatience, you should negotiate very differently than if you're negotiating with someone driven by being important. Now, in a typical negotiation, several of these may come into play. Your being an effective negotiator depends on your ability to correctly ascertain the drivers of the other party and then select tactics and strategies that work on that mentality. Now we're to the hard part. Making those same observations about yourself. Of all the drivers we've discussed, they apply not only to the other party, but to you as well. What's under the table for you? And experience has taught that while drivers can be difficult to accurately determine in others, they can be almost impossible to observe in ourselves. But the truth is, if you can discover and eliminate, or at least disarm your own drivers, you can become almost invulnerable in negotiation. And here's why. Every driver is a need, and every need is a lever for people to work you. Here's how that works. If you have a need to be liked or to look good, a savvy negotiator can use that and they'll work you. If you have a need to be safe and not make mistakes, that's normal, but a savvy negotiator can use that and they'll manipulate you. If you have a need to be fair, a savvy negotiator will work you. So here's what good negotiators understand. The under-the-surface drivers work the tactics on top of the table. Burn this into your brain. Whenever you use a negotiation to satisfy emotional needs, you give the other party an advantage. Because in negotiation, neediness makes you vulnerable. Most of the people who come out on the short end of the stick in negotiation, they're the cause of their own undoing. Now, when they talk about it, they whine and they point out how they were treated poorly, but when you examine the situation, here's what you'll find. When they gave other people an advantage, others simply took it. And here's the cliff notes on that. Don't use business to feel good about yourself. Use business to do business.